Parshat Vaera, standing on the shoulders of giants. Last week I went to go and visit the Shiva of Amichai Oster, Zichrono Livracha, the beloved son of Marcy Oster, one of my long-term students. And his fellow army unit members were sitting there, fresh mud on their boots and dirt on their uniform, was obvious they come straight from the battleground, most likely returning there soon after. What struck me immediately was their quiet, humble, reserved, but confident demeanor. In a heart-wrenching conversation Amichai's father had with them, they expressed a clear ethos of deep and profound comradeship. They said time and again, Achim anachnu, we're brothers. Despite their obvious heroism, there was something almost self-effacing about them. They shunned any praise or admiration, and like so many of our young heroes today, it was clear that in their minds they were no more important than the next soldier or even the next citizen. Dana Mehdi, a well-known singer and actor here in Israel, whose songs I've loved for years and whose concerts I've been to, was badly injured this week in Gaza. He's a beautiful song called Nigmar, finished, and when I heard it many years ago on the radio, I fell in love with it and promptly became a fan of his music. In this song, he describes the feelings of a soldier coming home from war. He writes, he says, "Uvaderech shiyatzanu labayit, when we were on our way home, atzarnu b'falafel b'pina, we stopped at a falafel shop. V'anashim sham histaklu machu kapayim, they clapped, they were clapping us. Hagiburim shelanu amru ba'avai, they said our heroes, they said with love. V'ani omed sham mistatel, and the soldier says, I stood there and I hid. It's too big for me, it's too overwhelming for me to be the person who's guarding, who's protecting. Between bites, this thought suddenly arose in me. Damn it, how many heroes there are in this country. The ambivalence that this soldier perceives, other people's perceptions of this soldier as courageous and heroic, is described in this song, but the ambivalence of the soldier contrasts so radically with the arrogance and the ego we see on the battlefield of the political arena. And to understand this biblical paradigm of leadership, I don't think we need to look any further than this week's Parsha. Moshe's a surprising choice of leader, it's clear, right? He's plucked from a life of elected obscurity. He's divinely charged to return to a life of leadership and prominence. In some ways, he really acts as the antithesis of what society aims for today. And I want to bring now two social theories about society to this week's Parsha. Erich Fromm was a German psychoanalyst who makes a distinction between having and being. In the mode of having, acquisition, and that can be of anything from material things to love to knowledge. When we live in the mode of having, that's the quintessential value, and it leads to hedonism, envy, greed, unhappiness. These are all outgrowths of that mode of existence. But the mode of being, when I'm not influenced by any external forces, when I'm true to myself, I seek things, knowledge, happiness, meaning as a channel to self-growth, to transformation, and most importantly, to authenticity. The outgrowth of this is altruism, community, joy, many other positive values of society. The second person is David Brooks in his book, The Road to Character. He explicates two ways of living our lives that parallel Fromm's categories. What he terms resume virtues and eulogy virtues. Resume virtues are characteristics that make us sellable, right? They're about the things we want to acquire, like the mode of having, our successes, our accolades, our material possessions. They only see the I. It's all about what I have achieved. It's all about the mountain I'm climbing up to get to the top. Eulogy virtues are the characteristics that will be spoken about ad Esrim at our funeral. They represent the sometimes painful, relentless journey to the honing of an ethical character. Eulogy virtues are built through self-sacrifice, humility, seeing beyond the self, community. Moshe is a man of being. He makes his journey from the peak of civilization to a nomadic existence, from the mode of having to the mode of being. Moshe is plagued by self-doubt. He says to God in this week's Parsha, who am I to go to Paro? I'm not a man of words. I'm aral safatim, I have uncircumcised lips. These are not the characteristics of one we would naturally expect to be a leader. David Brooks would remind us that they don't bode well for our resume virtues. They're indicative of a person who's humbly cognizant of their limits, who's conscious of the journey towards character formation, and whose empathy for the other underpins their worldview. Those are eulogy virtues. In this week's Parsha, Moshe turns to God and bemoans his inability to impact Paro on the people of Israel. He says, I haven't had any impact. They're not listening to me, right? How can I go to them? How can they listen to me? I'm of uncircumcised lips. And these uncircumcised lips remind us of the act of circumcision, which is literally a removing of an excess layer. In the mode of having, we convince ourselves that the excess layers we have in our lives, both from a literal perspective, that being materialistic sense, and also from a more metaphorical sense of the layers that we build to cover ourselves, to cover our inner voice, to cover our true selves. That's what Moshe is talking about. He is not a man anymore of layers of excess. Egypt was the hub of excessiveness. How could Moshe, who became a creature of moderation, living primarily in a mode of being, relate to the leader of Egypt that embodied the having mode? His inability to speak was a cry for help from God. He needed a quick fix, a change of personality, an ability to become something he was not, so he could persuade the others that needed persuading. In some ways, he was begging God to give him resume virtues rather than eulogy ones. God's response is revealing. He tells him that he's got to return to Paro and once more request the people's release. He teaches him the ethos of perseverance, of meaning and process. But the deeper answer lies in the very next verse, in a very strange juxtaposition. We have, after God says to him, you must go back to Pharaoh, we have a list of the lineage of Moshe's household. This features in Exodus 6:13. And it says, Eile Roshei Bet Avotam, these are the heads of the house of the father's house of Moshe and Aaron. And then it goes through the lineage. And the question is, what has this got anything to do with Moshe's cry to God to help him, of his cry that he's Aral Savatam, that he's uncircumcised lips? And what's it doing in the middle of the Exodus narrative? And I think in a way the Torah gives voice to Moshe's doubts and lists his lineage immediately afterwards to emphasize to us the true character of biblical leadership. It's as if God is turning around to Moshe and saying to him, you are part of something larger than yourself. Nothing can be achieved overnight. Success isn't defined through immediate results. If you measure your success as a leader on the immediate responses, your leadership will fall very quickly. Revolutions often fail to create sustainable change. Authentic transformation can't be made in a day. It requires patience, time, effort. Fame, influence, right, that arise overnight aren't sustainable. And most importantly, they lack authenticity. When we talk about the Avot in the Tefillah, we name the three of them, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, because each of them is dependent on the other. It is a process that works through all of them. Moshe's despondency is met by the divine with a reminder of his lineage, a reminder of the fact that he comes from greatness, and that means to greatness he can climb. Every successful leader knows that he stands on the shoulders of giants, and every bad leader believes he is the giant and others stand on his shoulder. And the narrative ends in Exodus 6:25-27. It ends with the words that these were the leaders of the father of Levites. This was Aaron and Moshe, to whom God spoke. This is such a poignant reminder of who we are. Moshe and Aaron are their ancestors. None of us are born in a vacuum. We're all part of a chain of generations, a legacy that precedes us. But each of us can make a legacy that ensues after us. When we know we are part of something bigger, it humbles us. That's what I've seen over the last 3 months with these incredible soldiers. And that's what I've seen amongst the youth and amongst many people here in Israel. If we focus more on being rather than having, if we cultivate eulogy virtues rather than resume virtues, and we choose to see our potential greatness with a huge dose of humility and self sacrifice, we can all become influential. For we are like Moshe and Aaron. We all descend from greatness, and on the shoulders of giants we stand.